Good thing my head wasn't down there. Hi, welcome to my project. This is a 1970 Lotus Super 7 that I purchased secondhand from a previous owner back in about 1974. He had this car and one other one completely apart in a garage, spread out all over the floor. It took me 2 truckloads and a full winter to get it back together the first time. Now, it's been apart and back together over those years, and it's had a few modifications done to it. Some of them have been a little non-standard, such as about 1983-86, it had a turbocharger installed. Now, it's been on the road pretty much continually since then, and because of that, it's gotten a little tatty. So I've decided to, for possibly the last time, take this car apart completely, right down to the frame, and I've decided to invite you along for this project so that you can share in it. So let's get the coveralls on and let's get started. Okay, we're just going to put this on the back of the car for now. Now, obviously, one of the first things you want to do is remove the battery. Okay, to gain easy access to the engine, I'm going to take the nose off, but that means I have to remove the license plate first. Now, it's not really held on by anything. The nose itself is also supposed to be held on by a couple of what are called Zeus fasteners, but the brackets that these attach to have long since been removed from the frame. So really the only thing that's holding the nose on is the license plate bracket and the hood. To get the nose off, I'm going to have to loosen off the headlights. Now the bolts are going to stay in the headlight frame. The nut's going to slide along the edge of the cable. And these nuts are brass and they've been pretty much worn out. Now the nose just lifts off and reveals all of the bugs from the last trip. Okay, the hood's off, the battery's out, the nose is off, the headlights are slightly removed. There's lots of fluid in this vehicle. We've got a dry sump system on it. There's an oil cooler on the front. So the next step is to drain the fluids and dispose of them properly. There we go. Anyway, I'm going to put those brackets back on, but I'm going to do that after I drain the oil out of it. Oops, I just poured oil over the bottom suspension. Okay, the hood's been sort of balanced on the back here. I'm going to put that off to one side. And I'm going to strip some of the upholstery out, starting with the tonneau cover. Get rid of my duster, stepping in the oil. It's leaking all over the floor. We'll undo the spare tire and place that somewhere out of the way. This tire was purchased new when the vehicle was bought. It's an old Pirelli. I don't know if I'd trust it, but it looks good cosmetically. Off comes the tonneau. The top is still in the back. It hasn't really been put up very much over the years. When this vehicle is run, whether it's raining or sunny, it's kind of claustrophobic with the top up. So if it does rain, you tend to get wet one way or the other. Now this stuff I'm going to put away inside, out of the way of all of the oil and grease. That's not how you fold it. Okay, side curtains. They're, I don't know if they're going to clean up or not. There's plastic polish that you can use on them. They're not used very much, so I don't know. It may be time to get a new pair, or if you don't really use the top that much, these ones might be fine. And can't go anywhere in a British vehicle without a set of tools. Oh, that's what happened to my screwdriver. Okay, the strap. Let's just wind that up. Oh, it's started to fray. So I guess it's time for a new one of these as well. You know, after a while you get to the point where you can say, well, that can be repaired, that can be repaired, that can be repaired. Before you know it, the whole thing can be repaired. And the top. And this is a small boot tonneau. Just fits over the back half. Map. 1991. And well, it's not a World War I flying helmet. It's actually a Russian tank commander's helmet, but the effect is still the same. I only wore this once. There's a pair of goggles around that go with it, but they tend to drill into your head a bit. Okay, seat belts. They're really old. They still work, but frankly, they're not certified anymore. I don't know if I can do anything to find something a little bit more modern and up to date. Possibly put some 4-point belts in it. In the meantime, they'll stay off to the one side. I can take the upholstery out. The seat just pulls out like that. And there's not a lot to it. It's got a little tear in the top here. I can possibly get that repaired, or I can bring a whole new seat in over from England. In fact, that's where I got these seats originally. The seats, there was an aluminum transmission tunnel, some shock absorbers, and a few other little bits and pieces came across on a flight from England back in about the early 80s. I'm going to stick this off to one side for now. Most of this upholstery is going to be, oh, there's the insurance, it's going to be stored out of the garage. As you see, it comes apart real quickly. Very dusty. And we'll put the insurance someplace. Oops, still slipping on the oil, not a good sign. Not I'm gonna fix. We'll dump the bolts off to the side. And the carpet. You can see this is really moldy. It's been oil and water, and it doesn't take much to put another piece of carpet in it, but it does have a stitch. It's a curved stitch in the middle. Again, I'll keep it for a pattern. Okay, we'll just dump those things back inside for now. I guess it's time to take the key out and put that someplace where I don't lose it. I think I only have one. This bracket is actually part of the frame, and on one trip I had several years ago, the frame broke right there. Well, actually there's the weld right there. It broke off on the right hand side, and it has to be welded back up. And because the gas tank sits right behind this tray, it's kind of a risky process to weld up a piece of metal that's that close to the gas tank, you know. There's the gas tank right there. So the person who did it did a very good job, and he said to make sure the gas tank was full, because the vapor is more dangerous than actually raw gasoline. Now, to get the fenders off, you got to get this piece of wood out, because these bolts are accessible from inside on the top, but the rest of them are way down, and it's easier to get at them from the top with this piece of wood removed. And off it comes. Now, I could leave this open, but then I've got gasoline vapors roaming around the garage, and that's not good. So once this piece of wood is out, I'll put this back on. I'll take the fuel filler out of the back of the body, and I'll put the whole thing back together. The wood that's in here is just a piece of plywood. I stained it with red mahogany a long time ago. It'll probably be replaced, but it's a very tight fit. So in order to get it out, you actually have to bow it and squeak it out the corners. And that, well, we're going to be redoing the body. It's actually an old piece of, looks like, well, looks like it came out of someone's basement wall. I really don't want to lose these parts, so I brought a bucket to hold all of this stuff. These bolts are a little hard to come by now. I'm going to try and keep these things all together as well. So we'll take the lenses off first. the bolts holding the actual light fixtures onto the fenders, they're accessible from the back side. There it goes. And the lens there just pops off. And we'll take the bulb out. And I think if I just reach up in behind, I can grab the nut. And we'll just, there we go, very carefully pull it off the fender. Now we have to get the leads disconnected, and I think they should just, no, they're crimped on, yeah. So it'll be wire cutter time for this one. And as far as the bottom one, I think I can get this one nut. And it's a strange connector. And we'll snip it here and here without taking my fingers off. And yeah, out it comes. And so there's the lamp. The other piece, well, there's, okay. Grounding wire, another wire. I don't know where that came from. I might as well get rid of the headlights and the wiring associated with it. So the headlight wires all come together in this middle section here. And here comes my cat. Come on, Molly. Come on in. Okay, there's a bundle of wires that are connected in the middle here. Typical British connectors and typical British wiring. Oh, well, I guess that wasn't holding it on, so we'll just leave the plastic clip for now. And we'll thread the cable back through and underneath the hoses. Front left and right signal lights are also attached. Oh, there goes the washer. So there's the plastic sheeting. I'll see if maybe I can find some of that later. Yeah, no, there's no way that this connector is going to fit through that hole. So as I did with the back, I'll have to rebuild it. So off it comes. Okay, and off comes the rubber grommet. Some of you might be wondering why I'm spending so much time getting the fenders off. Well, frankly, they're in the way. They're fiberglass. They're only being held on by 2 bolts and 1 bolt at the back corner. When I redo the vehicle, they're supposed to have a little bit of piping that goes down between the fender and the body. That's on the back, but I never really got the front ones properly aligned. So the front fenders need some modification to prevent them being gouged by these hood clasps as well. And so it just makes sense to get them out of the way. They're going off to the body shop eventually. These are carriage bolts. And oh, this one, the nut on the bottom is it's only finger tight. Again, it's fiberglass and you don't want to tighten it up too much for fear of risk of cracking. This is the only portion of the fender that's actually attached to the side of the vehicle, and it's held in place by something called a roll nut. It's kind of like a blind fastener. In this case, it's really blind because it appears to be spinning in the side of the vehicle. See, the fender is loose. It's not, it's just that I can't get this one last anchor off. And I don't want to damage the fender if at all possible. Short of that, I can always drill the head off the bolt. But this is what restoration is all about. Stuff that breaks, stuff that won't come out. Okay, plan 2. It's not really going to drill the head off. I put a Robertson in here and I'm going to see if I can persuade it out with a little bit of high speed. Except I got to turn this thing to reverse. And this is not a reversible drill. So I guess it's back to plan 1. it's going to stay on. I guess I'll try the other side. Okay, maybe this side will be a little easier. We'll try again with the front ones and get this one. Well, we'll get that out after we get the fender off. So there's our fender. Now, it might be a little hard to see that with black on black, but that's the roll nut. And that was what was holding the fender on. This is what the roll nuts look like on the other side. While we're over on this side, we might as well try and get these back fenders off. That takes care of that one. Another one here in the back. Same thing, they're just sort of finger tight because of the fear of cracking the fiberglass if you tighten them down too much. That one's out. First time I took this vehicle apart, that one I just pull out. Yeah, I took it for a spin and hit a chuck hole or a pothole, whatever regional diversity you have, and the back fender came whoosh right off because it bottomed out. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3 fenders off and one fender that's being a little difficult. I guess, like I say, I'm gonna have to wait until I get these inner panels removed. They're just held on with pop rivets. Some of the suspension bolts go through them as well, so I guess I have to get them in the right order. These things here that are holding the front fenders on will potentially stab me, so I think I'm going to get them out of the way first. Maybe if I remove this one in the front, that'll help get that other fender. So that just loosens. Comes sliding out. So this is going to be all stripped, wire brushed, cleaned up, painted with some rust paint to make sure that it's got a few more years left in it. Well, we really can't do the other side because I still got a fender attached. So let's see if these will come off any easier. And the nuts inside are spinning. So let's try the bottom one. Yeah, that's spinning too. So I have to get a long wrench to hold those on. That's a long wrench. Let's see if we can feed it down in behind here without dropping it. Catching the nut as it spins. There's the nut. Okay, 3 fenders off. It's beginning to look more like a race car. I don't know what the next step would be, but I think for safety's sake and risk of damage, I should take the windscreen off. It's only held by 4 bolts, and that will allow me to work over top of the vehicle. Loosen the back one. These ones are easier to get at. The other side has the windshield wiper motor sort of buried in behind. Okay. Now I'm just going to get in, pull this other bolt, holding the windscreen. And there it is. These tiny, tiny, mostly ineffective windshield wipers. There's just a little clip underneath that you push up. And I don't even know where you'd find replacement blades for these things. Okay, there they are. They don't do a heck of a lot, but they're perfect for, well, every car has to have a windshield wiper blade. So they're going in the bucket with the rest of the headlights and signal lights. And I think what we're planning on doing is, because this panel here, I can't get the fender off until I get the panel off, but I can't get the panel off until I get this off. So I'm going to take the scuttle box off next. So I'm going to take the air horns off and the bezels for the windshield wiper motors, and we'll get this off and out of the way. Yeah, I siliconed it on. And there's the other one. There is no starter solenoid on this car. Actually, when you turn the ignition, all it does is turn the ignition on, and then there's a button on the dash, well, on the firewall, and it closes this circuit, and it basically is just one big switch. And This is one of the reasons why I'm rebuilding this, is because this thing is not functioning properly. Some gauges are attached electrically and some gauges are attached with a mechanical connection. This is the vacuum boost gauge, and it was something that was added when the turbocharger was installed, and there was really no place to put it, so I stuck it over here on the passenger side. I guess it had a kind of an extra scare factor for people who were sitting in the passenger side, but I couldn't really tell what the boost was, so I had to have them read it off. But it's connected with a copper pipe, and it goes through the firewall, through the scuttle box, and up to the engine. There we are. The dash is really nothing more than another piece of aluminum. And there's one boost gauge. Well, this is where the pipe goes in. It's right at the front, goes into one inlet of the entire system. So maybe this is why it never really seemed to have a lot of boost. It's because it was only feeding off of one cylinder. The last thing that's holding the scuttle box on, other than the bolts that are go through the frame, which I can get at relatively easily, is the speedometer cable. So I'm just going to pull, see if I can get that loosened off. Again, it's a knurled nut, and again there's a rubber grommet. So let's push it back in. There, we'll pull the rubber grommet out. Okay, there's carriage bolts that are holding the scuttle box onto the portion of the frame, and then further back in here there's another bolt that goes down and into the frame. Okay, you can see it's loose now, so we'll just gingerly up. Oh, all sorts of extra stuff. You can see that with the scuttle box off, it's really very easy to get at all of the components behind here. Some of these things are going to be rebuilt. Some of them are just going to be cleaned up. The wiring on this vehicle is a combination of connectors, and some of the gauges actually have bare wires that screw into terminals. So the only big problem is I still can't really get that fender off because that panel has been siliconed on at the back. So I'm not too sure what the next thing is. I think I'll probably do a little cleanup. I'll get rid of this cable, or this piece of copper pipe as part of the vacuum line. Maybe I'll take the carburetor off. Oh, and I haven't drained the antifreeze as yet, so maybe that's the next thing. And yeah, it should hit its mark. And I'm going to loosen the rad cap, and that'll help it flow out faster. So with that wonderful sound of Niagara in the background, the reason that I decided to drain the antifreeze at this point is because the turbocharger installation actually has this box here that runs hot coolant from the engine through to help warm the air-fuel mixture going in. Without this box, it got very cold, and the air and fuel didn't atomize very well. The accelerator linkage is held on, just anchored by this bracket. It's just a standard cable accelerator, and so we'll just loosen this one nut off, place it down here on the oil tank, loosen the second one off. There may be another way of configuring this for the next reincarnation, but this seems to work really well. Then up at the top, the cable fits through this brass bushing, so we'll just pop the cable forward, push the brass bushing back, quite a mouthful, and then slide the cable back and out of the holder. Now, I loosened this earlier to get the fuel tank emptied, and I just stuck it back on for the time being, but it's not much point in having it on now, so we'll take that off. We'll just push it off to the side. These hoses are probably going to be replaced, but we'll see if we can get it out of the fitting and intact for the time being. So let's just break the seal. Oh, and we still got a little bit of antifreeze in the hole there. We'll just lift that up. And that's the, I'll drain that here in a second. There are lots of lines, cables, hoses that are still connected to this engine before the engine can come out. So I'm going to get my snippers and do some snipping. That last snip actually freed up this vacuum gauge line. So this oil gauge line is actually, it feeds the turbo, but it also feeds the oil pressure gauge that goes to the dash. There we go. It's full of oil and it'll drip all over the place. Okay, well, I guess it's better that it's full of oil than it's not full of oil. There's one other gauge that goes back to the dash area, and that's this temperature sensor unit, but it's kind of buried underneath these rad hoses. So I'm going to take the rad hoses off. This vehicle also has had a habit of overheating over its lifespan, so I may be replacing this rad with a totally different one. One of the reasons that I did decide to do this restoration in the first place is that I have a 5-speed transmission that I bought about, oh, I can't even remember when, but it's part of the restoration, and it will go in here and replace this 4-speed close ratio transmission. But I'm not too sure how it's going to work. It's going to have the drive shaft modified, and possibly the gear shift linkage is going to have to move a little bit. But that's all part of the process. Okay, this fender's just got to go. It's ruining my symmetry of my restoration here. You'll be glad that I decided to severely edit. Oh, it's still not loose. There. It's off. Now I can get rid of this bracket and the other one at the front. That's a mangled mess, but at least I can continue without this fender getting damaged. Oh, I just damaged the fender.